Okay, I guess that'll do it. Oh, that to-do list is wrong. Space Marine, Imperial Fists, Bug, High Contrast, Yellow. Okay, yeah, I think that'll work. Hello. Gonna have just a little mini painting hangout stream until about 6 o'clock, I guess. Officially kind of semi-retired from my previous job, which feels a little weird, and today is the first day of that. So I'm going to celebrate a little bit. I celebrated a little bit by getting some new paints. And those new paints are, one of which is like an ice yellow, which I've always seen used as part of these high contrast tutorials, but I've never used them myself. And I gotta say, it looks absolutely amazing. I think the lighting in this on this camera in the studio. Oh no! Did I already lose? Oh, I don't want that. I lost video already. It's only been a few moments. Give me one moment, please, because it looks like... There we go. I think the video is back, so we're gonna... There we go. Perfect. So I did this just as kind of a test, and again, you really can't... I don't know if you can really see the level of high contrast that's happening, but I went ahead and painted him up, and I gotta say, I'm super impressed with how good this just kind of looks. Because you've got these amazingly high contrasted spots on the Mini, and then you've got the rest of it, and it looks great. It's not the Imperial Fist color I would normally choose, but I kind of think I have to do this on all of my character units now. And I guess the rest of this Devastator unit, just because it looks so darn good. So, I can't seem to get the camera to focus any further than it already is, simply because of, I'm using a cell phone camera. So, we're just gonna have to deal with that, I suppose. You know, let's get it up to 400%, and you can see it's very fuzzy. And I think that's just because I'm at like 4 times magnification, so it really can't get any sharper than it already is. At some point, I'm probably going to get a better setup than I currently have. Right now, I've got my camera arm hooked up to the ceiling rafter, and I've got my camera just kind of hanging from that. And unfortunately, since it's a cell phone lens, it's the best I can do with the zoom. So hopefully, sooner rather than later, I'll be able to get a much more professional setup with an actual, camera as opposed to a phone camera. And then I might be able to use the camera on the phone for facial recognition, and I can start doing some actual animation with my VPO, or with my, right now, PNG tuber, but that'll change. So, this guy's done for now. He's about where I hoped he would be, and so I'm going to continue working on the other ones that I have and getting them to this level, and then I'm going to start painting the details once I get through that. So, just as a little bit of tutorial information, what I've read and what was suggested, it is a Spice Marine. Hey, Semajolies, how's it going? I had my last day at work today. I went in and got all my lesson plans and whatnot done, and I have no reason to go back to the building anymore, other than if they have any kind of more paperwork I need to sign, but everything else should be digital, so I should be good. But yeah, I did like a high contrast version of said Space Marine. I'm not sure if I can adjust the zoom well enough, or if you can really see it well enough, but let's see, he's got like a whole lot more done to him, so that it just kind of looks better, in the same way that I did, what's it called? In the same way that I did my Mortarion and whatnot. So I'm pretty jazzed with how he turned out, and I'm hoping that it ends up continuing to look really darn good. I just heard a beep boop. What was that? Oh, very cool. Someone did a really cool dreadnought on the Discord. Hey, Riptide, how's it going? So yeah, this is one of them. I'm going to continue doing more. I'm going to work my way through. So I think I'm going to work on Lasman. Whoops. I'm going to work on Lasman next. This is why I like plastic over resin. But we're going to work on this guy next. And what I ended up doing was I found a Jose da Vinci tutorial that went from like a really dark kind of red up to a like an ice white. So he started with kind of, it was called Hull Red, but this was the closest I could find, and he mixed that in with an orange, and then did a pair of orange mixed with like a what they called lava yellow, I guess. But I'm using Averland Sunset because it works fine. And then they mixed Averland Sunset with whatever it was called, lava yellow, I guess, with ice yellow. And since I couldn't find that, I'm using this Dorn yellow, which is incredibly pale, and that got me some really good color combinations. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on this guy, and we'll see how he turns out, right? And I guess on the otherwise it's just kind of a chill hobby hangout until I have to do dinner. So I actually didn't use the Galvor back red last time. I think I just used a red and an orange combination, and it did what it did, which was fine. So we're gonna see how well this Galvor back red mixes with this very bright orange, and see what this does to the armor. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my Winsor & Newton brush, and we're gonna give this a shot. Okay, so I can put him right here. Yeah, I found these Devastator models on sale for like half off at the local game store I go to because they were missing their barcode, and I thought that was kind of fishy. But the LGS I go to has been pretty legit, and they've been growing fairly rapidly for the past couple years, and I trust them to not sell stolen goods, so I'm assuming someone had bought it a long time ago and just decided to trade it in. The box looked pretty worn, but yeah, it was less than half off, I believe. I think it was at like $30, and I forget exactly how much Devastators are, but I've wanted a set for a couple years now, just because I like the heavy arms look of them. So being able to find that was real nice, because otherwise they've been kind of hard to find. Yeah, I know, right? $30 for a squad of Space Marines that are all carrying big gun is a great deal. And one that I was not expecting to find. They also had a set of Tactical Marines for the same price with the same situation where the barcode had been ripped off. So it was probably some kind of trade-in. I do know that if I find out that they were actually purloined from the other local game store in the area, which has had some problem with theft, I'm gonna have to go back to the other game store and just like give the proprietor $60 because I'm gonna feel bad. He's been dealing with some pretty bad medical issues with his vision, and he's the only one that works there because of budget concerns. So he's had some issues with a guy who's gone in there and stolen from him multiple times. And like one time when we went in there, he normally comes out, greets us, and says, "Hey, how's it going? You need any help finding anything?" And he's pretty cool. I like the guy a lot. But that time, he was very intently hailing someone and just making sure that they got everything they needed. Like he was hovering over them, like he was trying to be, the best proprietor he could, until the guy left. And after he left, he came over to us and said, "Hey, I'm sorry about that, but I've had some suspicions that guy's been stealing from us, so I wanted to make sure that he didn't have a chance to." So I'm really hoping that I didn't get models that were stolen from one game store and sold to the other game store, because otherwise I'm gonna have to owe Mr. James over at Mishap some money. But yeah, I'm pretty excited that this actually worked, because I came into this hobby with like zero art experience, and so color theory was always really intimidating to me. And finding out how certain colors work and how you can use them to create contrast and the like has been a whole journey. So like starting off with this kind of dark reddish orange and working my way up to ice yellow definitely was kind of a surprise. And it was kind of the same thing when I did my Death Guard guys, because I started them with like a really, really dark green. And again, I didn't use ice yellow, but I used another pale yellow as I worked my way up to their full brightness. And it ended up creating this really pretty emerald yellow look with like a proper glow. And it just really made the armor sing. So I'm really jazzed with how all that turned out, and that's kind of given me the confidence to continue trying to do more of these high contrast miniatures that really, you know, stand out on the tabletop. But I'm going to limit that to characters. I can't spend that kind of time working on every single troop in my army. At least not right now. That might change dramatically depending... Hey, Red, evening. How's it going? That might change dramatically based on the kind of free time I'll end up having as I transition between jobs. So, we will see, I suppose, whether or not my Imperial fists are all suddenly going to become, like, incredibly fabulous. And my hope is that they do, because I would love to just have that kind of army that people are like, do you have a job? How do you have so much free time as to make all of these guys look this good? So that's kind of my dream with either the Death Guard or with the Imperial Fists, or potentially both, is to just get 2,000 points of absolutely stunningly painted models. And I feel like I finally overcame that plateau of my skill set, where I feel like that's actually doable. Because for a little while I felt kind of stuck with, like, I can't get any better. I keep seeing these presentation painters and they're absolutely astounding. But it's really just been the case of keep trying, take risks, do bad jobs so that eventually you can do good jobs. And that's just been super encouraging. Just been pricing a dwarf army on Highlands miniatures. That sounds like a lot of fun. I kind of want to get into I don't know if I want to get into the old world, but I kind of want to get into Age of Sigmar, specifically to play dwarves. I tried to get into the Votann, but because of a spur-of-the-moment idea, I made all of the base infantry into Among Us characters. And while I love the joke and I love how it turned out, they clearly weren't dwarves anymore. And when I did get a chance to do dwarves, they didn't feel like dwarves, you know what I mean? They all kind of had that short bearded aesthetic, so they just kind of looked like very stumpy humans. And part of what I love about the dwarf aesthetic is just not only stumpy humans, but also way too heavily armored and great bushy beards that cover 90% of their faces. So having an army of armless crewmates or crew members and short-bearded or no-bearded characters just kind of didn't feel right. And so I sold that army, and I ended up using that money to buy something else. And I don't know, I think what I might end up doing is getting into either the Caradron, because I like their aesthetic, or getting into the Fire Slayers, because every single one of them have crazy huge beards. And even though it's more flesh than I think I'd really care to see in an army, it would allow me to get really good at that. I was looking at one-page rules dwarves. You like the way they look. You hope Dark Elves come back in Old World. They're the ones with the Hydras. As far as I know, they're getting kind of legend-ruled in the same way that, like, the Skaven and a bunch of others are. So, or Legacied, or whatever it's called. So, they're not going to get any further support, but they do have baseline data sheets that you can play with. And yeah, I like the one-page rules dwarves. I still wish, again, bushier beards, but I definitely appreciate that they tried to keep that aesthetic with the respirators that they have. The way they play is... Yeah. Either that or I'm thinking of the other type of... like, those are space dwarves. And I really dig the aesthetic, but I probably... That's not a bad idea either. I can just use the one-page rules dwarves as stand-ins for whatever other kind of dwarves I use. I just know that fantasy games don't feel like fantasy games unless they've got a good dwarf race. You know what I mean? If there aren't dwarves, it ain't worth it. And that's actually like my one complaint about Baldur's Gate 3 now that I've played it more, is that while there are dwarves in that game, because they're trying to hit specific like meshes and placements for the characters and their emotions, none of them have like humongously bushy beards. And it's just to me like, no, a dwarf is supposed to have huge beard. Having only 2 beard options that are that big feels wrong. So, that's kind of my one misgiving about Baldur's Gate, considering how the rest of that game is basically unfiltered perfection. More dwarf beards. So how do the dwarves play in the old world? Like, I have no idea what their playstyle is like or what their tendencies would be. I would figure heavier armor and better firepower. You're just getting into one-page rules, so I'm looking for a faction. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I haven't played as the dwarves at all, but they definitely look like a fun faction. And it looks like, and of course your mileage may vary with this, that they adjusted them heavily so that they were closer to like the Leagues of Votann with their characteristics, but kept with a more traditionally dwarvish aesthetic, which I do appreciate. Have you tried Divinity: The Original Sin 2? No, I haven't. It's another game that's been on my radar, but I just haven't had the time nor the money to play it. And honestly, after playing Baldur's Gate 2, I'm very much... That's like the next game in my queue. That and Rogue Trader. I've already played a ton of Rogue Trader, but I want to actually like get the game updated and then start it over again, because Rogue Trader was an absolute banger of a game up until it decided to glitch out and give me a game-ending glitch that I can't progress any further with. But it was so darn good that I'm willing to do it all over again. So I think that's a huge testament to how good that game is. They're hard-hitting but rely mainly on machines. That sounds like the kind of play style I want to do. I don't really want to spend more money to get into yet another army for another game system. I'm pretty heavily entrenched in 40k at this point, and maybe someday, when my financial situation stabilizes a little more, I can go ahead and get to something like the old world and start being a bigger fixture at my local game shop. But right now, it's mission painting and painting up the armies I already have. The gyro bomber is OP. Those are a set of words that I like to hear. I also love that part of the dwarves, is that they kind of have that weird Da Vinci inventor thing, but with a hint of madness and pyromania thrown in. I dig that about the dwarf faction. And that was actually not a connection I made, going back to the Votann for a second, is that, you know, dwarves traditionally are portrayed as miners, and they extract resources from the earth and are great with gem cutting and that kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, that all makes sense, but I never thought about how that directly applies to the Leagues of Votann, because while they're not necessarily doing like deep mountain mining, they're doing planetary exploitation to the point that the planets are left functionally useless and resource poor after they leave. So while they may not be going into the deep depths to get their resources in the same way that fantasy dwarves do, they're definitely still doing that, you know, resource exploitation thing. So I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, all this is really is getting this weird base layer down, which I don't know if the color's showing up for you guys, but it's kind of like a busted up red. For me, it looks almost like a salmon color, and eventually it's going to become the shadow color once I start putting on more yellow into it. So I'm excited for that, because like I said, the last time I did this, I just used a base red and kind of let it blend from the black underneath, and it worked fine, but it definitely left with some really dark shadows. So hopefully this will allow me to have relatively dark shadows, but not like I need to do a bunch of blending to bring it back up to snuff kind of shadows. But we shall see. And then I can go back and paint all the guns. And all the other miscellaneous equipment. It looks pink. Yeah, it kind of does, don't it? It's definitely not the color I would have expected. But every time I see painters use Hull Red, it ends up having this weird kind of magenta-y, pinky color to it. So, I guess that's what's going to happen. Is we're going to get that color to it. Because like I said, I was getting something similar to this with just red over black, but it wasn't this dark, or it wasn't this magenta-y, I guess. A lot more purple behind it. Okay, let's see what I can do here. Those can go. Because right now, it's whatever the dark magenta and orange color could be called, mixed together. And I'm not sure what I would call that color. Because it isn't quite pink. It's almost like a purpley pink. Either way, it's okay. It's going to look really good when it's done. And that's become my favorite thing about this, is like realizing that the ugly phase needs to be there so the layers are in place for, you know, the finished product layers to look absolutely amazing. So that's where I am right now. Let's get that one done. Get that done. Get that back on there. There we go. Throw the water off of that. Stir that back in. Oops, that's a little too much. Now, something that is kind of messing with me is I haven't used Citadel paints in a while. So having to readjust back to their consistency and how they mix, as opposed to Vallejo, has been a bit of a, not a struggle, but definitely a bit of a relearning experience. And that's definitely not a bad thing, because I have gotten very familiar with Vallejo, and going back and relearning how to paint with another paint is definitely a positive, because it just makes me a more versatile painter. That there, get a little bit of that there. I guess since this is the top, I probably ought to make it a little bit brighter. And of course I had to give him the beaky helmet, because the beaky helmet is just so damn good. Okay, so I like keeping the backpacks black. I think it creates a nice, fun contrast. So I think this guy is all, for all intents and purposes, not yet. He's really close to done with this base layer, which took me all of 20 minutes. I will say that does feel really good, because I know I'm not trying to paint for Golden Demon, so being able to get like a good solid first layer off of as little time as possible definitely feels pretty darn good. Okay, so I'm going to put him down, and next we're going to take some of this Averland Sunset and we're going to mix this into the orange to create the next layer. And that's something else that I'm starting to learn that I should get better with, is just not trying to create so many layers of blending. I've been having this problem where I don't trust my ability to paint individual layers, so instead I paint a whole ton of them that are really thin and only nominally different. And the problem is they end up looking so similar that I just go over the same thing over and over again, and I get no variance until suddenly everything's an incredibly bright color, which honestly doesn't look that great. So hopefully through this experiment I can learn to be a little more selective about my highlights, and that will all in all make my painting better. Especially if I plan on doing more commission work, because it'll shave a whole lot of time off of each project. Which, I mean, anyone can tell you is going to be a good thing, because more work done in less time means more money. But right now, It's just a matter of perfecting these skills, working on them, getting better with them. If someone had told me a year ago that this is where I would be with my painting, I would have told them, bullshit, stop drinking. But yeah, now I'm going to have a whole lot more time to do this. I don't remember if I mentioned it last time. I think I did. But I've basically had to leave my previous job as a school teacher because I've been dealing with a lot of stress-related health issues over the past few years. And it's been a big reason why I haven't had the emotional or social battery to stream. And I've also missed a lot of work because of it. So it finally got to the point where I realized that the main cause of my health issues was simply stress from the job. And because of that, I need to take another job. And what that means for me is that I've put in my resignation, and it sounds like administration is 100% behind me here because they've made sure to emphasize to me that I'm not going to have any black marks on my resume, and if they need me or if I need them as a reference, they'd be more than willing to do it because I've been an exemplary employee and yada yada yada. But it also means that my stress levels are way down because I no longer have to do this job. I've been a school teacher for about a decade now, and I guess I just got kind of used to that level of stress, and so I didn't really recognize that it was the cause of my health deteriorating so strongly. And it took marrying my wife and really strong support and advocacy from my friend group for me to start seeking professional help for the issues. And so I'm a little anxious because I'm going to need to find a new income source. But at the same time, I've got a roadmap planned out, and I have an idea of what the future holds for me. So hopefully it will all play out okay. And I'll continue to be able to make money and have a successful career and paint warhams and all that other fun stuff. This is looking really good. I'm really happy with this color. Again, I don't know how good it's turning up on the camera. It does not look like it's true to the colors based on my preview screen, but I can't say I'm too mad at it with my real world lighting that I'm getting right here off of my studio stuff. It's just creating this great contrast already between this orangey yellow and kind of the pinkish magenta that I've got going on underneath it. And I guess this specific brush isn't beat down enough that it's not creating some really nice blends. So I'm pretty darn happy with that. We're gonna go ahead and continue covering it in this base coat. There we go. Another thing that kind of surprised me, and I guess it's an example of just how stressed out I've been, one of my co-teachers tried to recommend me a movie, and he actually lent me the Blu-ray, so I need to get that back to him, called Dumb Money. And it's about the, I don't even remember what it's called, but over the pandemic when GameStop stock went through the roof because of the actions of some people on the internet, and specifically Wall Street bets. And I tried to watch that movie with my wife a couple nights ago, and I just remember for some reason that movie giving me like the most intense anxiety to the point where I felt nauseous. And I honestly don't know why, other than that it was reminding me of the pandemic, and everyone was using, you know, lingo and terminologies that were popular a couple years ago, but it was all in a movie with actors, and everything just felt kind of surreal, and it didn't quite feel right, so it made me violently ill. I've never had anything like that before, and so I'm hoping that it was primarily the movie and nothing else, because that would be super. Okay, yeah. I'm really digging this color and how smooth this is all going on. I also kind of like the overall texturing. Something that I recently found out that made me feel better about myself and my painting skill is that even the heavy metal team that does the box art for the Warhammer models, even they have their models touched up in like Photoshop. And so finding out that you know, it's not just that there's some kind of god painters with perfect blends, even though admittedly their blends are freaking smooth, definitely made me feel better about my own work. And also it's been kind of fun to go back and look at some of their much older box art to see how much the studio has improved and how much techniques have changed over the years. Because I don't think they have them on the store anymore, but if you looked at their Katachan Jungle Fighter models, you could definitely see a lot more brushwork than you can see nowadays. And I don't know how much of that is digital alteration and how much of that is because the techniques and strategies and skill levels have changed. But either way, it's kind of fun to look at and see how much, I guess, more refined painting has gotten since those models came out. Okay. Done. And I mean, a great example is just like these Space Marines themselves, the techniques they made to or they used to make these molds and casts and whatnot compared to what they're doing now. It's really impressive how far Games Workshop has come as a company with the quality of their models and the quality of their sprues and construction. So while I have heard the complaint that like the old sprues are better because they had more customizability, it's like, yes, but I would also argue that in general all of their poses were kind of this half squat with an open chest so that they can just kind of attach arms to the left and right sides, which if that's your jam, then cool. And it does make them look like game pieces, which I greatly appreciated. But at the same time, the level of complexity in their poses was way down compared to what it is now. And if you want to have models that have a more dynamic pose to them, then the new stuff is just out of this world. But at the same time, if that's not your jam, if you want your guys to look like game pieces that have just kind of a static, you know, not quite action-y pose, then I can see why people don't like that. You know what I mean? So, it is what it is, and as with everything else, your mileage may vary. Okay. And there you go. You can kind of see how I'm leaving just enough in shadow to create these really contrasty sections. Like in here, I can probably go back over with my magenta pink and blend this together so I don't have quite such a stark contrast between the orange and the, I guess I'll call it a pink, the eventual highlights and the shadows. And that'll do the same for that. Did I do it over here? Kinda, yeah. I think I left it a little more open over there, so I might be able to change that. Go a little bit further back with the highlighting. But yeah, all this is, for anyone who's curious, like how do you get such smooth blends? One, it's dumb luck and you know, trusting the process. But two, it's having a really good tip on your brush and just kind of, with a lot of deliberateness, dragging it all in the same direction. At least that's what's been working for me. And like I said, it's not creating the most beautiful blends right now. That's something I'm eventually going to work back to. But it's at least giving me these very clear boundaries so that when I do go back with another color to kind of blend the boundaries together, most of the work's already done for me. And hopefully within the upcoming months, years, whatever, I'll be able to get even better at this and share other technique. Right now, that's where I'm at. So that one's all done. Gotta do the last shin, or the last lower leg, and then his leggies will be done. Gotta mix in some of this yellow too. See, like I said, this is just Vallejo Bright Orange and Averland Sunset to create the orangey yellow that I'm getting right now, which will then be kind of the base coat underneath the much brighter yellow that's going to become the highlight. And again, a couple of thin coats will kind of get rid of that texturing, but for right now, I'm just getting it on the model so I can figure out where my boundaries and my shadows are going to be. Go ahead and do that. Put a little bit more there because it's looking a little thin. But yeah, I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out after one model's worth of testing. So hopefully, when I finally get to the Sergeant, who is actually a really neat looking model, I'll be really good at this, and he's gonna be the best looking one of the bunch. I mean, I wanted to only do him in this style, but I realized that starting on him and using him as the trial and error boy was probably a bad idea. So I went with my least favorite of the Devastators, and then immediately felt stupid when I realized, no, the one with the grav gun is one that I really like. I should have started with Melta Boy, but it ended up working out okay. It just now kind of obligated me to do every one of them in this style, so I got a decent amount of work ahead of me. That. That. There we go. Now, something that I will say, on a slightly different note but still Warhammer related, is I don't think that Games Workshop likes the AdMech at all. I feel like at some point they're going to admit that they actually have like a personal vendetta against the Adeptus Mechanicus, because they're apparently not allowed to have any fun or be any good ever. They just released a new data slate, which, if you're not following Warhammer very closely, is how they do the updates for the armies and for the units. And if one army is overpowered or one army is underpowered, they will adjust something about them. Like they might change some rules, or they might change some points. They'll do something to try and balance the game a little more, so that people continue to be viable in any game that they play. And for like example, the Eldar have just been really, really good. And a big reason for that is their Strands of Fate, or Threads of Fate mechanic, whatever it's called, that allows them to replace rolls with pre-rolled dice. So they can change, you know, something to a 6 and immediately get lethal wounds, or one of the other great character exploits. And even though they nerfed it once, it hadn't been enough, and the Eldar are still at the top of the pile competitively, and they're still doing amazing. So they nerfed him again, and we'll see how that goes. But the AdMech have been kind of awful for all of 10th edition. At least that's my understanding. And they've just been kind of pleading and hoping for some kind of buff to make them competitive and to make them viable and to make it so that their opponent doesn't laugh them off the table when they see them. And my understanding is that, like, they're okay, they've won some tournaments, but they're just not very good. And so when I found out via the data slate drop that they've gotten no bonuses, they've gotten no points changes, they are the exact same army that they were before the data drop, the data slate drop, it's just like, man, someone must have it out for the AdMech, because they're not allowed to be good. But I think, honestly, 40K is in a pretty good place competitively right now, because my understanding is that the only two teams that are above a 55% win percentage are the Eldari and the Necrons, and they're both sitting at like 56, which is remarkably close. And like no teams are sitting below the 45% cutoff that they kind of use as their metric. So I just guess that the game's going really well right now, and that's kind of weird for them. I must have been way too high for a lot of that, but And so now you can see his legs. Legs looking good. Legs looking pretty good. And that's kind of what's entailed with this style, is just very gradually, very slowly going through and making sure that your areas between the two legs have kind of a smooth transition. And if you can do that, then that you understand blending, I guess. On to the elbow. Unfortunately, because I don't understand volume, I'm putting these colors on and they're just immediately looking wrong. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's like a trick you can do where you can put colors next to other colors and that makes them look like a slightly different color. And a couple, I guess, months ago, years ago at this point, I don't know anymore, my wife showed me one of someone who was trying to explain that art is just magic and witchcraft. And the way they did it is they had like a painting, and on the painting one of the characters was wearing a gold outfit, like gold armor or something, and she was like, okay, what color does this look like to you? And it generally just looks like a darker brown, a darker gold. And she was like, I thought so too, but then when I isolated it, it looked like this. And when she did, I don't remember what color it was, but it couldn't have been more different, and it couldn't have been much brighter. It was like this strange off-white, but because of where it was placed and the colors it was placed next to, it ended up looking like, you know, a dark brown. And so it's just like, yep, art is wizardry. Our eyes just really like to lie to each other, or lie to ourselves, don't they? And that was actually an aha moment I had when I first started painting. I was talking to my wife about learning non-metallic metal and learning blending. And every time I'd watch a painting video, I'd ask her, you know, did you learn this? Are what they're saying, is it true? Or are they misrepresenting them? What's going on? And one thing she told me was, well, art is basically the skill of lying to your eyes. Because you're using a bunch of colors and shapes to convince your eyes that they're looking at something. Whether it be a person or a material, it doesn't really matter. But the point is, it's clearly not. It's just a flat picture. So you're lying to your eyes about depth, you're lying to your eyes about texture, you're lying to your eyes about color. And upon hearing that, I was like, oh. And so I've begun to understand how, you know, sometimes you'll have an ugly phase, but that ugly phase, because of how it's been colored or how it's been prepared, is going to lead to an absolutely gorgeous, pretty phase, right? And that's kind of the hope, that's kind of the plan, is that I'm learning to trust my ugly phases more with my minis, and just get to see how awesome they look when they reach that pretty phase. Because that was one of my biggest hurdles when I first started painting, was trusting the ugly phase. But yeah, we're gonna see how good this looks as I continue to paint these sections. And yeah, like I said before, having a good brush tip really helps with this. Because if you don't, then you end up with excess water, you end up with all sorts of other weird problems going on. But because the brush tip on this Citadel paintbrush is surprisingly still really good, I'm able to do a lot of things I otherwise would not be able to do. I hope my voice is coming through loud and clear, because I know that I've got the volume of the music up pretty high, but I didn't think it was like disruptively high when I did a sound check. So hopefully, even though I'm not really facing the mic, I've got it close enough to my mouth that I'm still very audible and clear. Speaking of audible, make for another segue, I need to get back to reading audiobooks. I have the time again, So it would make a lot of sense for me. It would behoove me to go back to listening to him. I just finished, the last story I read was the last of the City Watch books by Terry Pratchett from his Discworld series. And I've got to say, I'm happy that I finally got a chance to be exposed to Terry Pratchett, because I always felt like I would like Pratchett, but I have this bad habit of being reticent to try new things if they've been recommended to me. So I spent a lot of time being resistant to reading Terry Pratchett and dedicating time to it. And I guess I'm happy that I finally did. I'm a little mad at myself for taking so long, because that man's writing is a gift. And it's really kind of upsetting to know that it was kind of upsetting to know when I finished Snuff, which was the book I was reading, that is the last original adventure that he wrote about those specific characters that I grew to love so much over the 7 or 8 books that he had done. So I'm eventually going to have to go back and listen to his other stuff. I've heard Mort, which was his book about death. I don't remember if it introduced death as a character, but it definitely established who Death was in his universe. And I've read The Color of Magic, which introduced Rincewind and was his first ever book. And it's kind of interesting seeing his writing style evolve through those books. And it wasn't always necessarily how he wrote his characters, because it's pretty consistent. It's more like how he, I guess, acknowledged and began to shy away from stereotypes. And he seemed to work pretty hard at empowering women and discussing social injustices when it came to ethnic minorities and jingoism and othering people. And his books came out, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So the fact that that was something he kind of made very central to his narratives, I'm just overall real impressed by it. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and hit his collar with this orange. I probably should go ahead and hit his back right here too, because that's going to be very visible. And while most of it is technically heavily obscured, it doesn't look great. So I suppose go ahead. And actually, while I have this out, I can do this again with my with the other model that I was working on. Do I need to do this specific color with the other model? One moment, please. No, it looks like he needs a coat of ice white on there to help bulk that out, which I think is the next one. Which is the next one I think I'm going to go for. I think next in line, since I already have the Averland Sunset out, is to use this Dorn Yellow as my off-white, my ice white, ice yellow approximate. It gets a really good, tasty looking highlights on the guy. Okay, so now, hopefully he no longer looks pink. Now he should kind of look like a radioactive orange, which I think he does pretty okay. But now, we're going to mix in this Dorn Yellow into this Averland Sunset, which should create a fairly bright yellow that I can now exploit by only putting on certain parts of the model where I feel like the light would hit the model the hardest. Which is right there. And now he's got that great looking highlight going down the side of his lower leg. And if it ends up being too stark a color, then I can go ahead and hit it with my other mix of orange to yellow as a transition color and blend it all together. And so far, that's been kind of my experience for the day, is learning how to do that stuff. Learning how to combine these two colors into a really pretty, really visually arresting contrast across the model. And by and large, I think I've succeeded. I think it looks pretty darn good. And I know that as I continue doing this, my light placement and my shadows are going to get better and better. So I have that to look forward to. And that will really help with my understanding of light placement. And then eventually I'll be able to really start entering into competitions and doing stuff like Golden Demons, which is kind of my eventual goal, is to be good enough to enter a Golden Demon and place somewhere, even if it's just like a judge's commendation. Because this is a hobby that now I've dedicated a decent amount of time to. So having that validation would be nice. Okay. Yep, there we go. There's a leg. And I'm just going to repeat that process throughout the rest of the mini, where I feel like light would be hitting the armor and then reflecting off of it. So probably going up the leg like so, since this is a cylinder. And that's something else that I've always understood but never really gotten a chance to practice, is that all of these are geometric shapes. Like your entire model is made up of geometric shapes that then, you know, actually that can probably go all the way here, that then are given a little bit more nuance. So when you look at a leg, especially on a Space Marine, you're just kind of painting a cylinder. When you look at a head, you're painting a sphere. When you look at a torso, you're painting a box. And knowing that and becoming more knowledgeable in that has also kind of helped with light placement for me, and keeping it consistent. Is like, if a light was shining down on him from here, how would his leg be lit? And it's like, oh well, he's a cylinder, so it would most likely do this. So, you know, it's all been really helpful. It's all been really nice. I have no idea what this part is, so it's going to get a little one. Yeah, that can go down like so. That can go over like so. That can go over like so. I think my biggest issue now is going to be learning how to panel line, because absolutely infuriating. Okay, and something else that I keep seeing is that, like, less is more. Getting to a good mid-tone and then knowing when to hold off on highlights is an important skill that I don't have yet, and that I'm going to need to continue to work on. So hopefully it's a skill that I can keep trying to learn as I keep getting better at this. Get a little bit down there. Yeah, and there we go. And eventually, I'm going to do just a straight-on white, and that's what's going to make it look really good. Okay, we're going to take some of that. And I'm actually curious what will happen if I glaze this a bit, because glazing is another skill that I'm not really good with. But there's only one way to learn how to do it, and that's by practicing it, right? Never going to get better at something like glazing unless I actively practice it. And hopefully, after a while, it'll start paying dividends. Because right now, unfortunately, these borders are very sharp. And I guess, technically, the bottom of the thigh will have a little bit of shine to it. Maybe right here. So we're going to go ahead and give that little bit of shine. Probably not as bright a one because it's not getting hit by the same light. It's getting hit kind of by like the reflective dirt, I guess. Not exactly sure. Okay. And I suppose it would make sense to do kind of the same here. Again, just give a faint reflection. coming off of the inside of the leg. And that'll look pretty good. So I got my stuff onto Doig and Swift's Community Day again, and I was really anxious because they definitely changed their form to say you're only allowed to submit one thing. And I thought maybe it was because they were just going to have way too many people submitting for Community Day, which turned out to be partially true. But as it turns out, the reason why is they did want to reduce the number of submissions, but they were going to try and reduce it down to like 3 or 4 or 2. But Google Docs only gave them the option of reducing it to, or keeping it at either 5 or reducing it down to 1. So, unfortunately, they had to go with the reducing it down to 1. I kind of cheated because I put a bunch of pictures onto one photo and just made it a collage. Found out I wasn't the only one to do that. Felt a whole lot better. I showed off my typhus and my Death Guard Combat Patrol, and they seem to really like that. So, just more encouragement about getting better. And hopefully, the same will apply to you guys as you keep working on these, as you'll realize that whatever you end up doing today is just going to be stepping stones to doing greater things tomorrow with whatever you have decided to pursue. Whether it's a hobby like mini painting, whether it's another skill set like cooking or martial arts classes or whatever, it's just really fun and kind of uplifting to know that you're only going to be getting better. It may take time, there may be some stumbling blocks, but as long as you keep trying, as long as you keep being persistent, you cannot help but improve. Am I even still on camera? I am still on camera. Fantastic. Okay, gotta give him the ice white treatment again. Ice white and a bit of yellow. Just a little bit on the edge of the foot. One thing I am rapidly learning is that you really, really can't rush it. Every time I have tried to rush the painting, it has ended up being a problem. Because things get where they're not supposed to get, brush strokes get sloppy. It just ends up being not a good look. So hopefully, I can be a lot more deliberate with my paint strokes, and I can have much better looking results because of it. There we go. And I guess the good news is, even though this is all kind of the ice white, it's not the only ice white. There's going to be a lot more eventually poking through as like shine highlights. And that's going to go a long way at making this look really good. Do that. And there we go. Now his leggies are done, I think. Yeah, they're about done-ish as compared to you guys. Oh, I went a lot more yellow with this guy. I wonder, should I go ahead and copy that? Yeah, I think I should go ahead and copy that a little bit and spread out the yellow a little more so the highlight hits a little stronger in some spots. Because otherwise it's going to look like he's wearing orange armor and the sun's just hitting some really bright spots on it. If I go up a little bit and push the highlights into a wider range on like the leggies, it'll look more like he's wearing yellow armor and he's just got some heavy shadows going on, which is what's creating the darker orange look. And that's going to be okay. So let's go even further into the back pocket over here. That can be really nicely blended in a minute. Same over here. Go pretty deep into that. But yeah, so in general, I hope that your days have been going as well as mine have recently. And that whatever you're working on, whatever you're going through, that you are thriving, or at the very least surviving. Because life is too difficult already. And even though I'm just kind of on here a little bit at a time, I hope that any streams you end up joining are relaxing. Because that's kind of the whole point. We're just kind of hanging out, painting some cheese men, making them look as good as possible, and then watching them go die because they're one of the worst Space Marine armies in the game. There we go there. Same thing up here. What I think is kind of cute is that they apparently used to just mold the purity seals right onto the models. And to me, that's kind of funny because in most modern models, they don't do that. They have the purity seals strapped in separately as bits that you can go ahead and put on the guy. Though I do believe that there are some bits and bobs that have purity seals just automatically attached to them. Like there are certain backpacks that do it. There are certain chassis that do it on like vehicles. But I just feel like by and large the purity seal has become something that is attached later at your convenience than something that's automatically part of a mold. Go ahead and do that for that one. Like so. And there we go. Now his leggies look a whole lot more done. So bully for me. We're gonna do the same thing. Mix the ice white with the Dorn yellow with the Averland Sunset, which is supposed to be an ice white lava yellow mix. And we're just gonna go ahead and use it to cover kind of the top half of the shoulder pad so that the bottom half is kind of layered into pretty steep shadow. Very gently hit everything else with downward strokes to imply that wherever it stops is kind of where the sunlight would stop. And that way you still get that nice shadow underneath of the darker color and the darker contrast, right? At least that's kind of the plan. Gonna mix some more of that in there. Wrist bit go across. Actually, in this case, I don't want to leave little puddles at the bottom, so I'm actually going to paint up. And that way, any puddles of paint will collect at the top near the top of the backhand instead of halfway down the model's backhand. Whatever you want to call it. I don't know. And now I'm going to do a little bit of blending between the orange and the much brighter yellow, and try and make that look a little more natural. Which actually would be better served doing if I were to use it like a glaze. I always forget about glazing because glazing is a technique that requires a lot of time and patience, and I definitely don't have that second thing. Okay, mix that back in to create that nice off yellow again. And actually, I think I can go further down because his hand is almost vertical. So he wouldn't necessarily have a whole lot of the shadow showing underneath his hand. That looks better. And yeah, see, he's coming along. Compared to the color of his other arm and his helmets, he is definitely getting a whole lot more yellow and contrasty as we move on. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have to redo Torgaradon and some other models because they are some of my favorite models, but they are definitely not painted to this standard. And if my leaders are going to die and go down in a blaze of glory, they're going to do so with some really awesome color schemes. So again, in general, I'm just trying to envision which parts of his limbs would have color on them and which ones would be hit most by the sunlight. And I'm not really good at it, but I would argue that the only way to get better is to keep trying and to keep painting, and eventually you'll kind of get a general idea of where light would hit your models. Additionally, if you're really worried about it, you can always just, you know, prime them in black and then put them under a lamp, and wherever the light doesn't hit, you've now found your shadows. That's an old technique that I remember hearing about, and I tried it once and it was an absolute disaster, and so I never tried it again. But what I do instead is I just kind of eyeball it. Because there are certain parts of the body that are clearly not going to get sunlight when you put them at an angle. So learning which parts those are have been very helpful. Okay. Okay. Put that together. There we go. Get that nice, beautiful yellowy orange. Yeah, I gotta admit, as much crap as Citadel can get for how expensive some of their product is, their paint line is definitely not bad. Because I've been having, you know, close to no problems with it since I first started using it. I just always wanted to try something that was considered to be higher quality, like Vallejo as my main example, because that's the one I've been using. But I guess the problem with Vallejo is always is actually getting supplies, because they don't really export as often as they used to. And so I was going to actually go get some AK Interactive, because I've heard they're also good, but the store that sells AK Interactive in the area is closed until 5. So I was like, well, if I can't go do that, I might as well patronize you know, my favorite store in the area. And instead I just ended up getting a bunch of Citadel paints and then transferring them to droppers, which I always forget how to do until I actually start doing it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, this was stupid. Why am I doing this to myself? And then it gets a whole lot easier and less messy. So it all worked out okay. And I guess the good news is anything I'm currently not painting I know is going to be a different color. So I'm not super worried about accidentally marking them up with the brush. Like, you can probably see it on the backpack a little. There's some weird stains now and spots because I hit it with ice yellow while I was painting different parts of the shoulders and hood, or the shoulders and head. Okay, yeah, that turned out looking pretty good. I wonder, can I do some blending with the ice yellow mix and get this transition to look better? Actually, the way to make it look better is to brush towards the brighter matching color. And then I'm gonna have to tease it back the other way with the orange. With the orange yellow. The other way. And eventually, if I do it right, I'm gonna have a really smooth blend. And that's all I want. Same thing back here, not the prettiest transition, so we're gonna just hit it again, overcompensate a bit. There we go. And then get some water back on the brush, go back to the orange yellow. Make yourself a really nice glaze. back over the other way. And there we go. That's going to look about as acceptable as it's going to look. Oh yeah, I probably ought to do an ice white highlight, ice yellow highlight, down here on the ankle. There we go. And probably on his butt. I did not do the butt. So again, just a bunch of tiny little brush strokes to get the implication that there is some light shining off the bottom ridge of both of these pieces of armor. And on his back. So just swipe that down a little bit. Back towards his body, which apparently I didn't even hit with orange. Good lord. That one I can't really see, so that'll be fine. Let's go ahead and hit part of his chest with the orange-yellow mix I was using earlier. So I'm not going straight from like this dark magenta black into an orange-yellow. Like so, hit that like so. And I guess the good news is since this is in kind of a dark area, it's probably going to stay fairly dark. We'll have to look at it when it dries, but there we go. He's not done, but for an hour and 12 minutes of work, he looks pretty darn good if you ask me. Yeah. So yeah, I think in this system, it's probably going to take me a few hours for each model, which is fine by me because something I got really into when I first started this hobby was trying to paint as many as possible. And while it did work, and while my armies were painted, they were painted to a standard that I would now consider to be fairly mediocre. And it meant that I had a lot of armies and a lot of units, but it also meant I didn't have a lot of playtime. So what should be happening, as far as I'm concerned, is I should slow down, focus really hard on like one or two models that I can paint up real nice, and then bring that to bear when I play the 40k. Now something I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ice white, and I'm just going to panel line him a little bit, so that we can really have some nice, sharp, striking edges to accentuate the paint job. And of course, I can't help but mess up some certain spots. Oh yeah, and I suppose the next thing I should also do is give him some real nice shine highlights. Beautiful. That almost looks white in this light. I do not for the life of me recall putting this song on the stream, but I'm not going to argue. I was like, it's nice. Okay, same thing here, just a little bit of shine highlight. Which is funny, because then I look down at the dang wet palette, and it's nowhere near this pale. It is purely a fabrication of my mind, because against all these other colors, it looks very, very white. Which I suppose is something that will have to be seen. When I post this guy up on the social media. I had a moment today that caused me to have a little bit of a little bit of consternation. There's a gentleman that works with me, or that I guess is a former colleague now, because I'm not really employed anymore by the district. But I never had a problem with him personally, in that him and I seem to get along okay. But I had a problem with him because he was a government teacher that very much seemed tone deaf to a lot of the situation of the students. And so he was he had some very traditionalist views and some very like personal responsibility, all your fault kind of views, while ignoring a lot of the socioeconomic factors and developmental factors of the area. And so it apparently led to him having some very intense discussions with students who vehemently disagreed with some of the things he would say and do. And led to me kind of not liking him as much as I probably could have. But he's using my room for accommodations for students who need to have like a small private area to test. Uh-oh. It looks like my camera froze again. Oh, it did. Oh no, give me a second, guys. Video capture device is turning off, and I've lost connection. Oh no, I've lost connection. That's bad. That's real bad. Just 23 is searching for devices, so it's going to do that. This is going to happen. Looks like I'm back with the connection, but I do not have camera. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to go back to camo to see if it'll pair a device. Looking for devices. Not finding, which means I need to bring this back down. Yahar. Okay, hopefully that'll work. It found it. It found it. And now I can back up here. No device selected. Oh. Dagnabbit. There we go. I accidentally hit the home button, so let's press 23. There we go. That's all fine and dandy. Let's get back to here. Is this back on? Video capture device. Boom. Fantastic. We're back. But anyway, he was using my room today as part of that accommodation thing. I don't know if you guys heard me what I was saying. There's a teacher that I was not very fond of on a political professional level because of some of his opinions and how he treated students. But he was using my room as part of like accommodations for certain students, and that's fine. It is what it is. And he emailed this out months ago, and it's like, okay, whatever. And came in today and asked if he could use the room. And I was like, yeah, sure, it's still available, it's fine, because I'm on my way out. I'm not going to be here anymore. And as I'm starting to leave, he's like, I'll send another text. I sent an email out, months ago, but I'll send another one out to make sure that the rooms are all still available. And I told him, you're going to probably want to send it to, the secretary and someone else, because I'm not going to be here anymore. And he got really concerned. He's like, well, why? I said, well, I've had some medical issues, and we've kind of pinpointed them to it being the job, so I've got to leave the job and find something else. And he was, oh, well, I'm sorry. And there was just so much concern in his voice. And it's fine, it's great, cool. I'm glad that you're sympathizing, but like, I've heard some really bad stories of how you talk to the kids. And that was just kind of frustrating to hear. So, hopefully, oh no, it died again. Still got the computer going, still got the connection. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, I think I got 2 alerts, which are weird. I'll have to look at those later. But it's just kind of like, I wish you could have the same degree of compassion for your students as you do for your coworkers. So I guess that's another reason why I'm kind of happy to be out of that, because I no longer have to deal with watching fully grown adults treat, essentially children poorly, which was always incredibly frustrating. Okay, yeah, it's still going. It's just kind of, it's being a little funky. It's being a little laggy, and that's not good. Highlight, highlight, highlight. Not really a highlight, but that'll work. I wonder if I should go back and do a lot of these with actual white instead of this ice yellow. Because, like I said, it's looking good. I'm liking how this is looking, but the highlights feel kind of bare. There we go. There we go. There we go. And I think, what time is it? Yep, I think after I finish with this guy, it's going to be about time for me to head out, so I can have dinner with the wife. But what's going to happen is I'm going to finish getting his helmet, making sure that I have this really nice highlight via the helmet, which will hopefully work. I do love the beaky helm. I think someone mentioned it, and I kind of agree that the beaky helm was definitely something that made Warhammer models and Warhammer Space Marines stand out compared to other sci-fi Space Marine types. And while I do like the snarling Mark 7 helm a lot, I think that the Mark 6 beaky helm is just kind of an iconic piece of Warhammer iconography that needs to stick around. I'm still not overly fond of the Primaris visor, but you know, there's not much you can do about that at this point. It's not worth getting in a tizzy over, so I'm just gonna continue enjoying what I enjoy. Okay, let's see here. Let's go ahead and try and work these highlights into this, because I think I forgot to highlight this poor lad. So he's going off of like a really incorrect orange up to an ice yellow without a transition. So I'm gonna go ahead and give him that transition color. Forgot to do the highlight for his helmet, so here it is. Here is the highlight for your helmet. Yep, awesome looking dude, man. Dude, man, Nick, awesome. There we go. And I will have to go ahead and hit his eye. Actually, no, you know what? I'm going to use this dark Gal Vorbak red to get inside his eyes. And get that initial dark color, and then I can continue using a lighter red for everything else. We're also going to use it for this lens, I think. Yep, that looks fine. Neato skeeto. Hopefully the back of my head wasn't in too many of those shots, because I just looked up and noticed that was definitely in some of those. But yeah, there we go. Now I've got two dudes who are highlighted in this fashion, and who look pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. So I'm gonna go ahead and call it. I've got to go have dinner with my wife, and I need to clean up. So thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully I'll have more time to stream again later, not necessarily today. And I suppose I will see you guys later. So have a good rest of your evening, have a good rest of your day, and hopefully watching that was encouraged you to paint some more. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.